Hi, my name is Clint Hoagland, and this is the second volume in my Learn to Live series. Today we're going to talk about racks. First I want to talk about drum racks. Drum racks are a feature that came in a couple versions ago on Live, and if you're like me, you probably looked at the drum racks and go, wow, that looks like it's pretty cool, but then when you actually got into the way that it looked pretty complicated. So what I want to do is demystify the way that the drum racks work. They are really simple. They're really powerful. So let's talk about those right now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up one of the ones that come with Live out of the box. So I'm going to grab this one. It's part of the Live 8 library. You only came into our ultra simplified Live template that we talked about in our last volume. Drag it there. Kit Club. Okay, what do we got here? This does look pretty complicated. Okay, looks like we got a ton of different pads on here. Got a bunch of macro things, which I'll talk about macros in another part of this lesson. If we click on this thing, looks like we got a bunch of what are called chains. I don't know what that is. If we click on that, then we get even more stuff. Okay, this is looking pretty complicated. And it's pretty intimidating to somebody who hasn't gone in and created a rack of their own to see what's going on in this thing. So what I want to show you is how to create a drum rack from scratch, and it's really simple and, as I said before, really powerful. So I'm going to delete this guy right now, and I'm going to create an empty drum rack. Just pull this guy right. I'm going to delete the MIDI track because, as you know, if you pull something into the dead space in Live, then it creates automatically. Okay, now I got an empty drum rack, nothing in it. How do I get stuff into these pads? Because basically these represent pads like on an MPC style drum sequencer. I'm going to go to my library here. This is just like my own personal library of drum hits. I've collected jillions of drum hits over the years. And now what you can do is, if you click on this guy right here, it says drop devices here, then they literally mean just drag and drop whatever you want. So what do you need? What do you need first when you're creating a drum kit? Well, let's get a kick. All right, that sounds decent. Acetone kick sounds pretty sweet. I think those are both the same one. Ooh, check that out. Elise's fat kick sounds good. So I dragged and dropped that on here. It automatically assigned it to a pad. Let's find ourselves a snare. Got some snares. 909 snares are always appreciated. Okay, that one sounds pretty good. I'll drop him here. Once again, it assigned it to a new pad here on the drum rack. And let's find some hats. That sounds like a decent one. Hey, the first three sounds like something I might want to use. So I'm going to shift up arrow to select all three, or you can also shift click to do it. And then I'm just going to drag all three of them down in here. Doot, doot, doot. All three of them appeared inside this drum rack. Okay, so now if I create a new clip inside this track, all these guys are automatically available to this thing. So let's make a quick loop out of this guy. That was pretty easy. And if we go back and look at our drum rack, okay, these guys are triggering. Like I said before, it's basically like an MPC style drum sequencer. Let's make another clip. This one I'm going to add our kick and snare in. Trigger that guy. Rockin'. Okay, so now that we've seen how that works, here's another couple of interesting features that Live makes available for these guys. I'm going to create a new MIDI track. You can either do that by right-clicking, hit Insert MIDI Track, or if you're a hotkey junkie like myself, you can hit Control-Shift-T. And then you can change the output to drum rack. And then you can either select the entire drum rack, or you can select each one of these guys individually. Like, say for example, you only wanted to select the snare, then you can do kind of interesting thing here. See what's happened is that instead of giving me a one-shot sample of the snare, what it's done is it's given me the entire keyboard. So I can go like this. Or you can audition so you can hear it. So if we create another one of our clips here, we can go boom, click, boom, boom, and we'll just go. And on this guy, do this whole scene and go. Mine sounds kind of corny, but if you're into like breakcore or whatever and you want to do that Venetian snares thing where the snare drum goes, then that is the way to do it using a drum rack. Pretty handy. Okay, now let's go back to the original clip that we had. We'll stop all clips. Click that button to stop all clips. And back to our original boom blick loop. Okay, let's say we like that loop, but we want to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of when we want to launch things. So one way you could do that is, say for example you want to have a loop that's just the hi-hats or a loop that's just the kick and snare. One way to do it would be to do what we've done here, which is go, and then you want to add the kick and snare. But it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on with that one. There's another way you can do this, which is actually a little bit more powerful and kind of interesting. What you can do here is, if you select these three guys, so these are the hi-hat tracks here on this instrument rack. If I click and drag this thing right here, it created a second drum rack. Now what's in the second drum rack is these three hi-hats. Now here's the ridiculous thing that Live has done. It's super smart about this. It pulled them out of the original one. So these three hi-hats are no longer in the original drum rack. They're now in this one. Now notice something else. There's clips on here already. What are in these clips? It automatically did this so that it brought the hi-hats over from the original track to the second track, and it subtracted them from the tracks on the first track. So now if I go, pretty useful. Okay, there's one more way that you can make a drum rack that's really interesting, and it's so easy it almost seems like cheating. I want to show it to you right now. If you start with a regular old drum loop, or it really can be any kind of loop, it doesn't have to be a drum loop, but we'll try a drum loop for our purposes today. You drag this guy into the dead space, and okay, this is what are we listening to? Of course, this is the Winston's classic Amen. Okay, first thing we want to do is want to warp this guy. And what this has done is Live has gone through and created these things, which they're called pseudo warp markers. Basically, they're transient markers on all the transients in the waveform. And then if you right-click on this guy to get the context menu, if you go to Slice to New MIDI Track, watch this. It says create one slice per transient. You can get other options here. You could do it by warp marker, or you could do it by various subdivisions of the bar. Slicing preset, I don't know what the different ones are. I'm going to use the built-in one, and I'm going to hit OK. Okay, what just happened? There's it just created me a drum rack. What's in this drum rack? It sliced each transient into its own chain in the drum rack. So check this out. If you're familiar with importing Rex loops into Live, this is going to look very familiar. Basically what it's done is it's done the same thing that Recycle will do. It automatically cut the waveform into slices that are now in a drum rack. And if you want to listen to a preview of these guys, you can just listen to any of them. Oh, got rid of him. So now you can do anything that you can do with MIDI on this stuff. So if I just want to, like say for example, I want to take this second bar and I want to quantize it and loop it. Maybe we want to do, and we want to move things around. Maybe we want to go like this. And we can do all the other things that we mentioned before, like we can have another MIDI track going in and just looking at one of these, an individual slice. Really, really useful, and such an easy shortcut that it almost feels like cheating. The last thing I wanted to talk about is there's another thing that's really useful about racks. We're going to get into the idea of parallel versus serial chains in the racks in the next lesson, but I want to talk about this real quick. Let's get another snare drum into this drum rack here, just because I want to show you something. Where are my drum one-shots? Here we are. Alphabetical order. Who does that? Oh, these are hats. Okay. Okay, now let's drop that into this drum rack. And let's say I want to make another loop here. I go once again. Okay, now, so we can hear that it, let's say we want to do something to just that one new snare that I made. Each one of these chains here is individually accessible, and each one of them is its own, basically it's equivalent to a chain, like an entire track. If I double click on this guy, it brings this out here, and you have, it's its own simpler, is basically what we're looking at. So if I'm looking at this guy individually, the first thing I can do is I can change the envelope characteristics of this guy. So that's pretty interesting that I could do that. That's pretty handy, actually. But another thing that you can do, and this is like ridiculously powerful, is that this whole chain is, you can drop more effects in this thing if you want. Let's go up here and let's drop our own effects in. Let's say anything we want. Let's put in reverb because it'll be easy to hear on the recording. So for demonstration purposes, let's drop a large chamber on our little snare. Well, it sounds terrible, but you can see what I'm saying. I put that on that guy individually by himself. Let's put on something that sounds better, like maybe a saturator. We'll do that guy. Yeah, so you can see that I changed that just by dropping it right on the chain, and it's not on any of the other guys in the chain. So if I wanted to do a different kind of distortion on the kick, for example, then I could just do that. Drop this hot tubes guy in there, and so that's really useful.